Hey, the Lone Top 10s here with another awesome video just for you. There is something equally fascinating and repulsive about human remains, whether they emerge as part of a murder investigation, an archaeological dig, a horror film, or a Halloween outfit. We connect with the dead human body on a number of different levels for a variety of reasons. What is especially interesting is the way different cultures have treated and preserved human remains across the globe throughout history, as well as the different reasons these bodies and body parts are still valued today. So anyway, here is the list of the top 10 human remains you can visit around the world. Now this will feature one honorable mention, and I will do that right before we get to the number 1. Anyway, let's start us off with number 10, the Egyptian mummies. You can find these at the United Kingdom. The ancient Egyptians mummified their royalty, priests, and sometimes even pets, so that their bodies and souls could travel safely into the afterlife. But the process was notoriously gory. The vital organs were removed from the body and stored in ceremonial jars, and the brain was pulled out from the nose in pieces. British interest in ancient Egyptian tombs, where the mummies were kept, rose during the Victorian era and became especially fashionable when Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon discovered the tomb of King Tut in 1922. Due to the Carnarvon expedition and the treasure hunting activities of other wealthy Victorians, the British Museum in London holds the biggest collection of ancient Egyptian antiquities outside of Egypt. This includes 2 rooms full of mummies, one of which is 5,000 years old, in the Roxy Walker galaxies. Another key mummy in the museum's collection is that of the high priestess of the Temple of Amun-Ra, which is said to be cursed. The story emerged after Thomas Douglas Murray purchased the mummy in 1889. Murray experienced a series of several misfortunes, including losing his arm and witnessing the deaths of many friends and colleagues who have been in contact with the mummy. Even handlers working for the museum died after touching the mummy's case. Many also reported unsettled noises and moans coming from the mummy late at night. This may suggest he's alive. Actually, I'm just kidding. Other museums in the United Kingdom also have mummies in their collections. Manchester has one with 20 mummies, collected by William Matthew Flinders Petrie, who also donated them to the British Museum in London. Egyptian mummies can also be found in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto, the Louvre Museum in Paris, the Egyptian Museum and Papyrus Collection in Berlin, the Museo Engino in Turin, and the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, Egypt, what I just mentioned just a second ago. Number 9, Sakushin Batsu monks, Japan. Sakushin Batsu literally means self-mummification. It was performed by Buddhist monks between 1000 and 1800 AD, in the hope that their preserved bodies would become a gateway between the mortal world and the spirit world. The monk would therefore achieve a higher state of enlightenment. The process gradually deprived the body of nutrients to reduce the amount of bacteria left after the death of the dude who had just died. The monk was buried alive under strict temperature restrictions with a continuous air supply so that he could continue breathing and die slowly, leaving his body behind almost completely intact. Unlike the other Egyptian mummies, the Sakushin Batsu monks do not have coffins or tombs, but are displayed in the open air. Often, their hair, nails, and clothes are preserved. They also will remain seated in the lotus position with their legs crossed, the pose they chose to die in. They do share a connection with the Egyptian mummies, however. If Sakushin Batsu was achieved, the monk's body would be worshipped as a god figure or living Buddha, just as the Egyptians believed that their mummies were bodily representations of the gods on earth. Just think about it, guys. Although the practice of Sakubinshu is not explicitly outlined in Buddhist teachings, the practice became popular among monks who wanted to be worshipped after death in 1877. The Japanese government outlawed Sakubinshu after it was deemed to be a form of ritualistic suicide, which is already illegal. The last known attempt of Sakushinbitsu was performed by Tetsuro Yaki, a one-eyed monk whose followers adjusted his death records after Sakushin Batsu was confirmed. That way, the date of death would appear before the practice became illegal. Not all attempts at Shakubinsu worked, but the successful ones are on display in a number of temples across Japan. Tetsuyaki is available to visit at Nangaku Temple in central Tsuruoka in northern Japan. Others are on display at the Dainachai-bu Temple on Mount Udano in Doi Province and the Kakakuji Temple in Sanyaku and in Yamagai Prefecture. Many monks had also been buried throughout Yamagai Prefecture. Their bodies would have been abandoned after Sinubaksu was made illegal. Just think that. Number 8. The Sedlik Ossuary, Czech Republic. This was the only church with a difference. Half the decorations inside were made out of human bone. That sounds pretty scary, right? It feels like I'm talking about Halloween here. The church also features one of every bone in the human body within a single chandelier. In the entire chapel displays the skeletons of 40 to 70,000 people. The original church was built in 1400, with the bone decorations added in 1870 by woodcarver František Rindt. Initially, the church was much like any other church in the region until King Alcatar II of Bohemia sent a member of the Sedlik Cistercian monastery to the Holy Land on pilgrimage. While there, he collected a jar of soil, brought it back to the church, and sprinkled it across the cemetery. Sedlik suddenly became the place to be buried for anyone who wanted their remains to be closer to holy soil and therefore to God. With so many people leaving bodies to be buried or reburied in the church, the cemetery became overrun. Bones started to be stored in the cellar or ossuary or the bone store. Rindt was then brought in to help fix the problem. Rindt was employed to organize the bones kept in the chapel basement, but was given no further explicit instructions. The bone decorations he created, including a coat of arms for the Schwarzenberg family, have attracted tourists and filmmakers ever since. It's now nicknamed the Bone Church. Also, the Sedlik Ossuary is one of the oldest sites where you can see human remains arranged artistically and with great skill. You can also see the bodies of about 40,000 people in a space that wouldn't be able to hold them all if they were living. The current administration for the ossuary calls the atmosphere peaceful and believes the church respects and celebrates the wishes of its dead by allowing their bones to rest near holy soil. Number 7. Kupferwelten, or Body Worlds, Germany. The Body Worlds exhibition is equal parts art, science, and shock factor. This large selection of real human bodies stripped of their skins and posed an interest in positions like running or performing yoga. How the muscles of the body work. That shows how the muscles of the body work. The exhibit is toured all around the world and continues to do so, but the permanent exhibition and laboratory where the bodies are preserved is in Guben in the state of Brandenburg, Germany. The exhibit was created by Gunther von Hagens, following his invention of an experiment with plastination. Using this process, the water and lipids are extracted from human tissue, organs, and body parts, and they are replaced with plastic. This means that the body part or organ becomes solid so that doctors and medical students can hold and examine it directly. After giving university lectures on the application of plastination in medical studies, von Hagens started performing plastination commercially, creating a touring exhibition so that the public could pay to see. The Body Worlds exhibit has faced a considerable controversy over its 20-year lifespan. Religious leaders, politicians, and members of the general public agreed that von Hagens was not showing enough respect to the dead, and that the exhibition was immoral. Now, in response, von Hagens said that all bodies plastinated for the exhibition were donated voluntarily via a program that made it clear how the bodies would be used. There's still over 15,000 people who have agreed to donate their bodies to future exhibits when they die. According to von Hagens, it cost approximately $75,000 to plastinate an entire body. A head comes in around $16,000, and other organs come around $2,700 each, depending on the size and condition. Despite being such overhead, entrance to the exhibit is reasonably at around just under $13 in doll. This means that the future of the Body Worlds exhibit is uncertain because it costs more money than it makes overall. Number 6, Les Catacombs in France. This is a key tourist spot in Paris, and there was even a movie about There's been lots of documentaries and movies about the catacombs of Paris. It exhibits the bodies and skeletons of people who were formerly buried in the cemetery of the Innocents near Saint Eustache in central Paris. People were buried in the cemetery for about 1,000 years before it became a health hazard, like carcinogen in the heart, and the bodies had to be relocated. 6 million bodies were moved to Les Catacombs between 1786 and 1860. They're now on display within the 200 miles of tunnels and chambers beneath the city, although some of these areas are off limits to the public because, obviously, they could get lost. There are rumors of secret tunnels and entrances into these restricted areas, which have been used illegally by partisans known as cataphiles. However, these secret places are not advised to tourists, and it's not socially acceptable to look for them. Due to the creepy atmosphere and darkness of Les Catacombs, it has been subject to a number of conspiracy theories over the years. These include stories that fresh bodies were found within the restricted chambers, that the gates of hell are located in the tunnels, and that a recently discovered video shows a man exploring Les Catacombs before being chased away by a ghostly presence. None of these stories have been properly verified, and many believe them to have been hoaxes, but the story certainly adds to the mystery of Les Catacombs, particularly in relation to the restricted areas that only a few lawbreakers get to explore. Well, definitely not me. Number 5. Tolleman, Denmark. The body has been one of the best preserved bog bodies in the world. Discovered in 1950, the remains were mistaken for those of a recent murder victim because the body had been well preserved for a long time. The body was preserved, the body was discovered with a rope around its neck, like hanging, indicating that the man had been killed by hanging, obviously. Traces of a final meal of porridge or oats were still in the small intestines. By examining the Tolleman man's teeth and skeletons, scientists estimate that he was about 30 years old when he died, around 350 BC. When discovered, the remains include the man's hair and belt. It was assumed that his other clothing rotted away from the acid in the bog water where he was found. The body was also wearing a pointed sheepskin that has been sheepskin hat that has been tied around the head. Although the entire body measured about 5'4", it was believed that he was shrunk during this time in the bog. In fact, some of his bones had begun to pierce through the skin in ways that demonstrate the skin getting smaller, and therefore putting pressure on the ribs, hips, and shoulders. Tolleman's internal organs, including his brain, stomach, small intestines, lungs, and heart, were all incredibly well preserved and were eventually removed for further examination by medical staff at the Copenhagen Hospital. A particularly well-preserved finger was cut off and later examined by forensic officers in 1976, making it one of the oldest collected fingerprints in the world. Number 4. Bart's Pathology Museum in the United Kingdom. While there are lots of great medical museums around the world, Bart's is special because it's only open for special events. These events are often themed. Past events for Valentine's Day include a special display of dissected hearts, and previous Halloweens have seen workshops on edible body parts and suspected vampire bodies. Many of the events encourage and teach visitors to get involved with museum practices themselves, including educational seminars and taxidermy workshops. Of particular interest, the human remains at Bart's are all diseased and were acquired from different parts in history. This means that visitors can take a trip back in time and examine what conditions were prevalent in different times and just how they were treated. Many of the bodies and body parts within the museum were acquired through the old judiciary system that punished criminals with execution by hanging and then anonymization. That means that their bodies were cut up and dissected. And you know what I mean by hanging. Doing that. Simple. That's called choking someone to death. So don't try that home. Number 3. Vladimir Lenin, Russia. He was obviously the first leader of Soviet Russia, and upon his request, he wanted to live in a glass coffin after he died. It is currently right on display in Moscow. I would highly recommend you going over there. Number 2. The Elephant Man, United Kingdom. You know the man, Joseph Merrick. He died in 1890 from protein syndrome, which destroyed his skeleton. He has became something of a legend in British culture, and, well, I should have told you, he died in 1890. Alright, anyway, honorable mention, Mao Zedong, as he died in 1976, and hint, I gave the thumbs up because it was approved. Number 1. Albert Einstein's brain, in the United States. Albert Einstein died in 1955, we all know that, but his brain has been one of the interesting things in history. indicating that Albert Einstein was smart. That's all I want to give out. Alright guys, that is it. Subscribe to this channel, like this video, and see you guys next time.